Greetings, everybody, and welcome to today's VentureBeat webinar on how to adapt creatives for every platform for maximum performance, brought to you by Yellowhead. My name is Dave Clark. I'll be your host for this VB Live event. Now, before we get started, just a few quick notes. I want you to know that this will be a very, very interactive webinar today. If you have any questions for the speakers, we invite you to type them at any time under the Ask a Question tab on your screen. So get all of those questions in. Don't be shy. And also, if your question is specific to one particular person, if you could, please be sure to indicate that person's name in your question. That would be very, very helpful. I also want to note that there's a rating system on your screen that you can use to provide us with feedback at any time during the webinar today. You'll find that under the Rate This tab. This is great. You can rate this webinar on a 5-star scale. Even better, you can send us comments at any time. So let us know what you think of today's webinar. We encourage you to use that rating system at any time during the webinar and as often as you like. And I think that's everything you need to know for today. So let's get started with today's discussion on how to adapt creatives for every platform for maximum performance. And we're going to kick things off here by meeting today's speakers. First, we have Melissa Culbertson. She is Associate Manager of Brand Engagement Social Strategy at Burt's Bees. We also have Courtney Laurie, Global Head of Brand and Integrated Growth Marketing at Wayfair. Noah Miller is Marketing Creative Strategist at Yellowhead. And Kinney Edwards is Global Head of Creative Lab at TikTok. So let's start things off here with Melissa. Melissa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do at Burt's Bees?
Hi, my name is Melissa Culbertson. I'm with Burt's Bees. I've been in marketing communications a little over 20 years, and I've been with Burt's for the last 9 of those years. At Burt's, I lead social media strategy, which essentially covers how we show up across organic and paid social, as well as influencer marketing. So I'm very excited to be here.
Thanks, Melissa, and we're excited to have you. Let's move next to Courtney. Courtney, what can you tell us about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Laurie. Really excited to be here today. I'm the Global Head of Brand and Integrated Growth Marketing at Wayfair. And really what that means is I cover brand marketing channels like TV, online video, direct mail and catalog, paid social, PR, as well as our creative strategy broadly for the marketing channels across our business. And we cover not only just Wayfair, but our specialty retail brands as well, which are Joss & Main, All Modern, Birchland, and Perigold.
Excellent. Thanks, Courtney. Next up is Noah. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Noah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Noah, and I'm the Creative Strategy Lead at Yellowhead. I work with all of our clients on creative and on strategy and creating the right strategy for different platforms for their performance campaigns. I've been in the creative business for over 10 years, and I'm also very happy to be here.
Thanks, Noah. And last but not least, Kinney Edwards. Kinney, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hello, everyone. Kinney Edwards. I've been at TikTok for just under a year at this point. Early on in our growth and our journey, I lead a team of diversely skilled creatives that are focused on inspiring and educating the potential of brands, agencies, marketers, businesses of all sizes to build TikTok first and create an impact and a connection with our amazing creative community.
Great. Thanks so much, Kinney. Let's move now to our first panel question. It's time to get this conversation started. And here's the first question. How do you leverage user data in order to inform content creation that really resonates and drives performance? I think I'll throw this first question out to Courtney.
Awesome. I love this question. So I think many of us on this webinar probably face similar challenges. You're really trying to educate and win customers over and unlock loyalty and really an increasingly fragmented media and advertising landscape. That's like a marketer's dream, right? So fortunately at Wayfair, we're pretty well positioned to tackle this challenge as we've really taken a data-driven approach and performance-oriented approach since day one. And what I mean by that is it can really be highlighted in our personalization and relevance initiative. So the home category is incredibly unique. And customers are really driven by inspiration and having a unique, and also have a unique vision for their home. And we have unlimited selection. So if you've ever shopped on Wayfair, we have over 22 million items, and customers want to find what's perfect for them. And so in terms of really leveraging user data, we make that happen at scale through our personalization and relevance efforts by really leveraging our in-house software programs, our machine learning algorithms and analytics to ensure that we're serving every customer the optimal content at the right time on any touch point across all different types of platforms. Ultimately, we really just try to anticipate our customers' needs and use data to create a shopping experience uniquely tailored to their tastes, which ultimately really directly informs our content and creative asset creation efforts.
That's great. Thanks, Courtney. Melissa, any thoughts? Melissa, you're on mute.
I keep doing that. From an organic social standpoint, we really look at engagement and reach, but within reach, we're really starting to pay closer attention to the deeper levels of it, or within engagement, the deeper levels of engagement. So looking at comments and shares in particular, it's real easy just for people to scroll and tap to like a video or like a static image on Instagram. But really, when someone's making a little bit more effort for comments and shares, we feel like that's a better gauge of, example of engagement. So from looking at that data, we know things like close-up product shots perform the best for us, especially new lip balm flavors, which really shouldn't be a surprise. But one thing we also do is measure within content pillars. So something like a values-based piece of content wouldn't be measured against a product-based piece of content. So like if we're looking at organic social for Earth Day, we wouldn't measure that against like a lip balm flavor because the lip balm will always win. But what we could do is measure like Earth Day against last year's Earth Day, measure it against other recent values-based creatives to get a better idea whether it was effective or not. And then finally, one thing we also do is look at content formats against one another. So for us in particular, we know from our data that GIFs and video-based content on Instagram, for example, don't perform as well as static assets. It doesn't mean we don't do them, because at the end of the day, sometimes the story you need to tell, you need a longer form piece of creative than just an image. But we would measure video-based content against video-based content to get a better idea of if it was successful or not.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Why don't we move on to our next question and talk a little bit about community? I'm wondering what subcultures are a natural fit for your brand. And let me give you a couple examples of subcultures here. Hashtag cottagecore, hashtag plant talk, hashtag style hacks. Why don't we go to Melissa first?
Sure. Yeah. And that's one area we really haven't tapped into that much, but I love the idea. And I know there's just so much to explore there. But one thing we are actively exploring is the hashtag Learn on TikTok. It's essentially like this learning hub within TikTok that started organically from all that knowledge sharing that was happening, especially as the pandemic kind of ramped up last year. And so at Burt's, we're really looking to like drive credibility around our face care line because we're known as a lip balm brand. And so we think that we want to start tapping into like dermatologist influencers and other influencers to help like educate our community about all things skincare, from like how ingredients can benefit your skin or answering common skincare questions. And the Learn on TikTok hashtag in particular, is a place where people are actually seeking out education. So we feel like that's a great, starting point for us.
Courtney, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Similar to what Melissa was sharing, this is an area that we haven't fully leaned into, but is definitely one of a priority. And, to give some business context, people really know Wayfair for home furnishings and decor, but we really have an opportunity to increase our awareness of other home categories, like in the home improvement and renovation space, large appliances, housewares. And those emerging categories really actually lend themselves to some of these subcultures. So in the home improvement space, for example, level, we're really leaning in and looking at DIY enthusiast subcultures, particularly during the pandemic. You know, myself, you know, I've done a ton of home projects and really looked to Instagram and TikTok and different spaces to get inspiration. And housewares related to food and wine, like there's tons of people out there who are doing amazing things. And so how do we tap into those communities to help inform our creative and content roadmaps?
I want to go to Kenny with this next question about subcultures. Kenny, I'm wondering what types of approaches you take to recognize a subculture and connect with that subculture.
Yeah, you know, we always say on TikTok that, you know, culture and trends happen on TikTok, and that's super, super true, and a great opportunity for brands to just, you know, dive in. We talked a little bit about, you know, reading the comments and understanding that that's a way that you can really, you know, discover a new audience. But subcultures are something that if you can leverage them, they can spread your brand's message to a whole new audience with already ingrained loyalty, which I think is kind of amazing. But you have to do the work. You know, you have to learn their language. You have to speak to them in a real and authentic way. You know, like keeping it real is super important. And it takes a little bit more effort, you know, to craft your message creatively. But the reward is in the way in which the subculture community will adopt your messages, you know, and become these brand ambassadors for you in such a organic and passionate way. And I think for a brand to be able to tap into that is unique, and it's something that we celebrate on our platform.
Kenny, what you're saying actually really resonates with me, because I think you can leverage subcultures in almost two different fashions. You know, what I was speaking to, and I think Melissa as well, is how you leverage subcultures to actually inform the type of content and creative you're putting out. But then how do you also leverage subcultures to be a distribution for your brand and like an amplifier? So I kind of love how you were highlighting those two sides of it.
Yeah, culture is powerful, and these subcultures, you know, we think about them as a way to, you know, unlearn some of the things we thought about when we're looking at it from a demographic way. It's more than just, you know, a 26-year-old, you know, female. It's all of these people, you know, the different sides of them and their passions, and tapping into these subcultures as a way to make a deeper connection than just our standard, or the old way, I would say, of tapping into those demos.
We haven't heard from Noah yet, and I want to bring her into the conversation now. Noah, with so much diversity across different social media platforms, what are your thoughts regarding how you develop creative that resonates with the person, with the place, with the platform that users are on?
Yeah, so I think that nowadays we understand that each social platform serves its purpose in our user's life. Just like Kenny was saying, it's not just a person who's 26-year-old who likes specific something, who lives in a specific area. At the end of the day, these platforms provide our entertainment time. You know, why do I go on TikTok? What kind of pleasure does it give me during the day? What do I do when I go on Facebook and when I go on Instagram and so many other platforms? So we believe that at the end of the day, we need to come up with a really strong creative concept and then have that concept be translated to fit what a person is doing once they arrive to these different platforms. So for example, when I go onto TikTok, I understand that the first thing I'm going to get is a video that's open to me with the sound. Something that when I'm on Facebook, I'll probably be scrolling through a bunch of videos with no sound on at all. So I need to really understand as a marketer, what is the way that our audience is consuming their media in each one of those platforms, and then create creatives that are perfect fit for that. And I actually came today with some examples, so no worries, you didn't hear from me. I'll be speaking a lot. I was hoping, Dave, if you can put on, we've worked recently with Tinder, creating a campaign for them for their new video chatting feature. You know, this is a pandemic time, and at the end of the day, everyone is isolated in different places. So having this video chat feature is something that is huge. And we wanted to talk about how, you know, nowadays, don't text anymore, see each other. That's the new way to communicate. And we actually created 3 different ads for them under the same concept, each time attacking it from a different platform. So I want to show you today 3 ads, one for Facebook, one for Instagram, and one for TikTok. We can start with the Facebook one. We'll see it, and then I'll give you a little bit of an understanding of what we did there to make it fit for the platform. Perfect. So first of all, Facebook scrolling time, 3 seconds, people are out of there. So we wanted to create a really catchy opening, you know, talking about what is happening and like, you know, falling in love at first sight. This is something that we thought would catch the audience, make them stick and want to see what's happening more. Also, the whole editing with the BD editing, with the changes of the frames, we're telling this story in a way that's super quick. So that people would want to stick and stay along. Also, you'll be seeing that video was about, I think, 19 seconds long, which is actually a little long. We say 10, 15-second videos, that's the perfect length for people with their attention span that, 3 seconds and you're out of there. So we wanted to make sure that our message comes across right at the beginning. So we talked about this video chatting right within the first 5 to 6 seconds. And this is why I think this video works so well for this platform or Facebook. And now I want to show you another video we created for Instagram, which actually you'll be seeing it as a full video, but the idea here was to take this video and crop it into story ads. So this is actually a story ad of facts about what you can do with your eyes. And it's actually 10 seconds long, each one of them. So Dave, you can put that one on as well. So again, this is 3 story ads, each time highlighting a different fact about why you should video chat, because what's happening with the eyes that could help you. And I think also, the idea that someone can just skip from one to the other and see that there's a story from 1, 2, 3. And then of course, in the end, understanding that this is Tinder and this is this product, but it gives you a continuation and a reason to want to stick around from one story to the other. And the last one is for TikTok. I'd love for you to show it and then we can discuss it. So this is an ad that we filmed ourselves, real people. We actually created on TikTok. We filmed people who were actually around, and we created the whole design very TikTok style. The idea is to have, to have it fit right as native as possible to the platform, making it look as if it was content that a user created. Of course, in the end, we came with an end card with the messaging and everything. But the idea was to have the whole opening look very native and as if someone created it on TikTok. And but I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that you could tell that one, was filmed, part of it at least was filmed natively in the platform, and the way you use like the supers and everything on there too felt really native. And then one thing I wanted to point out is I like how with the TikTok and Instagram, you started with like a hook, like an insight, right? And to draw people in to make them, interested in the ad.
Yeah, I think that the TikTok example for me was a great way of looking at building, for platforms with intent, and the way that, that ad was built for TikTok. You're seeing a real, person, and it's not overly shot or overly produced. It's not trying to be perfect. It's just trying to present, these real people that you're actually looking to meet. So I thought that was great.
Thank you so much, guys.
No, I think we're gonna stay with you for this next question. I know you also have a few more short videos that you'd like the audience to see. So as we lead into those, can you talk a little bit about how you adapt concepts across different platforms, and when do you know when to bring in elements like influencers and tutorials and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I really think that, like I said in the previous question, that every platform has its purpose. So when I go on YouTube, I want to discover things. I search for how to do's. So I want to get information. When I go on Instagram, I want inspiration. When I'm on Facebook, I do a bunch of things, but I mostly just scroll through my feed to see what pops out at me. When I'm on TikTok, I also want to be inspired, but in a different way. It's the new way of inspiration and seeing people all together doing amazing things. So for each one, I have to see what's the purpose of my campaign and when do I have to bring people in. For example, and I'll show in a second some BuzzRx ideas that we created. Also, an app that provides discounts on prescription drugs. So we learned from them that someone saves every 5 seconds, saves money using BuzzRx. So we said, this is the perfect example to show people what they can do in 5 seconds and save money, and also show how people actually saved money. So we wanted to show a person telling their story and have it be as real as possible. So I guess we can start here with the TikTok ad that we created for them.
This speech is my recital. I think it's very vital to rock around. That's right on top.
You can actually save someone money every 5 seconds. This time, this someone is me. Will you be next?
Yeah, so here again, we shot ourselves, creating a toast with butter, opening a can, picking up the keys, things that happen in 5 seconds, while all along this is something that could happen to anyone. Save money in 5 seconds. We thought it was the perfect place to use. It could be influencers, it could be someone, just anybody for user-generated content. But for TikTok, it's definitely the best to be as native as possible. Make the ad look as if someone was looking for this specific content. For example, another ad that we created for YouTube, we wanted to talk about the skip button. Every 5 seconds, you have 5 seconds that you can skip the ad. So we, again, created content that talked specifically about those 5 seconds. And Dave, you can show it, please.
Until this 5-second countdown is over, I'll save money on medications, and so can you. In 3, 2, 1.
So first of all, YouTube allows people tend to watch ads a lot longer on YouTube. So there's room to make longer ads. But what we did was get our message across right in those first 5 seconds. So even if someone clicked the skip button because they went on YouTube because they wanted to watch a video clip or watch a specific video that they were wanting to watch, they still got the message right off the bat. And lastly, we created a Facebook ad where we did not use any influencers, no real people. We felt that this was a place where we wanted to get our message across, again, right off the bat because of the nature of this platform. And if you can show the ad now. So again, a very short ad, but all along we had the BuzzRx logo that even if someone decided to keep on scrolling, the logo was there, the message was there right from the beginning and actually all throughout the video, so that no matter what part our audience decided to move on to the next thing they wanted to see, they got the message right off the bat.
All right, we're going to move the conversation forward now and talk a little bit about brand. And I'm going to direct this question first to Courtney, and then I also want to hear Melissa and Kinney as well. So Courtney, first to you, what are your thoughts regarding your brand's key values and expressions that you want to bring to life when developing creative?
Yeah, great question. So when I think about the Wayfair brand, we've really created a brand that our customers love for ease and transparency and breadth. I talked earlier about the 22 million plus items that we have on the site. So really our selection, technology, logistics, and service are changing the way people are shopping for their homes. And we really talk about that a ton. So the two pillars that we talk about most with our customers, and really the backbone to our messaging, is the unparalleled selection that we have and the tangible value that you can get at Wayfair. So we have a really good, better, best offering. But what I wanted to also share with everyone here is just two things: that the brand personality really matters as well. So we really try to showcase in our creative that we're welcoming and we're down to earth, inspiring, authentic. These are traits that we really care about as a brand. And the other piece is how we take a bespoke approach and consider the platform or the marketing channel that we're connecting with our customers on when we're thinking about which pillar or value prop or proof point to show to which customer. So certain messages are really resonating with different customer types and audiences on different platforms. So when we think about the brand message, say, that we're putting on linear TV, it could be more generally based about the value that we offer to our customers, given that there's less targeting on linear TV. But in paid social, we might be doubling down and talking specifically about a specific category at a specific price point. So, the pillars are general, but how we actually manifest those in our customer communications really has a broad range.
Melissa?
Yeah. So for us, sometimes we're developing content really just for the goal of communicating product benefits. I mean, there's always a time and a place for that, like reinforcing hydration of like a new skincare line. But, Burt's is kind of one of the original natural care brands, and our values are really centered around reconnecting people to like the beauty, wisdom, and power of nature. And so we want to create content that reinforces that, that tells that value story across all of our touch points, like creative that focuses on our sustainable business practices, ingredient deep dives, responsible sourcing, et cetera. So we know that the product-based content, again, performs the best. So what we try to do is within those values messaging, like weave in products to grab more attention, weave in, not only the visuals, but, different things about the product, so we can kind of guide her along and pique her interest in learning more about the values stuff. Like we're working on a post right now about our jojoba oil, and it's used in our new Truly Glowing line. So we'll weave in images or gifts or different things with those products to kind of hook her in. Like with the values-based content for us, we know it's not always going to be the most popular or have the most engagement, but it helps tell a broader story about our brand. And so it's something that we'll never stop doing. It may not perform as well as like a lip care post, but it gives consumers like a more rounded sense of who we are. And then that buying these products help, build a better world for everyone. So we just continually create content, look at the results, and iterate as we go along to make sure that we're developing it better and better as we go.
And Kinney, what are the key values and expressions that you want to bring to life at TikTok?
I think, TikTok as a entertainment platform, we're really about the creative content and the quality of that content. So I think for us, what we try to, instill in brands and marketers is that, there are best practices to getting to that quality creative. The first thing we like to say is really engage like a user, like understand the ecosystem by engaging with it, playing around, putting that mindset on, because as you're creating content for these users, you really want it to feel like it's for them and not for you. The second thing is really think TikTok first. Right. So I think some of the great work that Noah had shared, you can see the difference in the impact you can have when you're really thinking TikTok first. That'll really allow your creativity to scale and be adopted, by the audience. and building a narrative, like what's in it for the audience. If we're talking about the quality of creativity, you really have to have a story that you want to tell, beginning, middle, and end. It has to be additive to their passion or their kind of interests, but it can also, help to start a new conversation, in telling that story. So really having a narrative is key, and creating with intent, approaching the platform with an audience first mindset to make sure that when you are telling your story or your narrative, you're intentional with what you want to do, and you're not, just sort of meandering around it. I think the community really respects when you're direct and you're kind of to the point, but you're delivering it in a way that you get the platform.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. And I also want to get Noah's thoughts about what you think is socially and culturally relevant that you can sort of tap into and create a repeatable action around. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think what's beautiful about social platforms is that they are universal, meaning that I can be in Israel or in the UK or in the States, but the way I consume these platforms is pretty much the same. Of course, a brand should make the localization as per the different aspects that same culture is talking about that specific brand. But from a platform perspective, I think that is the beautiful thing, that at the end of the day, we all consume TikTok the same way, we all look at Instagram the same way, and Facebook the same way, Snapchat. So the reason we go on those platforms, maybe we use different features in different countries, but the base is the same no matter where we're from. So the localization should be brand only, but the platform's best practice remains the same across all countries.
We're getting lots of great questions in from the audience, and I just want to remind our audience that if they have any questions for any of our speakers, you can use the Ask a Question tab on your screen. We're going to save plenty of time for questions, so get them in now. Why don't we move forward with this next question? And this is actually a question that I want to throw out to all of you. So why don't we just go around the screen here in clockwise order, starting with Melissa. Melissa, how do you actively test across platforms?
Yeah, so the way we do that is we typically will build a learning agenda alongside our media agency to test our creative. So we'll look at things like, does influencer-based content perform better than product-based assets, or do social ads that feature consumer reviews perform better than influencer or product-based? And then we just make sure we test across multiple platforms, because sometimes the answer on one platform isn't necessarily the answer on the other platform. So on another platform. So we found like assets featuring talent, for example, they don't do as well for us on Pinterest, but on Instagram they do. Or videos work better for us on Facebook than they do on Pinterest. But on Pinterest, 1, 2, 3, like skincare regimen, for example, that's the best place for it, because that really resonates as a place where people are going for information, to make their lives better, try new things, etc. So it's really about, finding out what you want to learn, and then making sure you find the answers on the platforms that matter to you, knowing that the answer may be different per platform.
Yeah, Kenny, how about you?
Yeah, I think our approach for TikTok is a little bit different than a brand approach. I think it's really more about, again, thinking uniquely TikTok first, or uniquely for TikTok, and just remembering that it's an entertainment platform and it needs to be an immersive experience. It's full screen, sound is on, and so there's a lot to work with there. So really, when you're looking about actively testing, you can play with those nuances. You could play with the sound, you could play with the focus of what's on screen and the way that you're telling your stories. But it really comes down to, playing around with things. I think we believe that, TikTok offers such a wide, opportunity for testing and learning, that it really is quite open. So not being afraid to test out new things with each iteration is quite a powerful tool that you can use to test, different creative stories.
I can definitely build off what Kenny's saying, because at Wayfair, we take a very similar approach. So we really embrace risk taking and learning really as a means to drive speed and innovation. So taking that testing and learning approach, making sure that our tests are always hypothesis led and make sure that we have the customer in mind, and really a long-term orientation, meaning, really thinking about how is this test going to impact customer lifetime value. The other piece that's a bit different about Wayfair versus other brands is we test in market always. So we don't do a lot with customer insights. We think that can slow things down, slow progress down, and so we actively test in market. And as Melissa said, do so across platforms and different channels.
And now we'll go counterclockwise and finish up with Noah. Noah, what are your thoughts regarding actively testing across platforms?
So my number one advice to any client who comes to visit us is always test a bunch of different things to see what works best and then iterate. So really depends on budget on different platforms. We'll recommend to create very different creatives. So if it will be influencers, UGCs, if it will be, assets use, it will be actual production, 3D videos. So any kind of a very different kind of creative format, and then test it. And then based on the results, make iterations and additional versions, and to just follow that way until you reach that one golden trend that works for you. But even then, keep on experimenting with new things, because whatever didn't work last month might work this month, and so on. So it's really a full-on experimenting, and not to stick to the same thing, to really experiment with a lot of different kinds of creative. And like Melissa said, sometimes static ads will work amazing. Sometimes on some platforms, the videos is what performs. So it's really a never-ending testing to see what performs well on which platform and in what kind of creative format.
Why don't we stick with the theme of objectives here? And this next question I also want to direct to all of you as well. So let's start off first with Kinney. Kinney, what are the right measures of success given all of your goals?
I think I mentioned earlier, that there's a little bit of unlearning and a shift from how you look at your audience and your current demographics from other platforms. We really want to encourage that brands are really making authentic connections, as a big part of that objective, and that really, you want to ask yourself, are you really making those authentic connections? Are you really listening to what the audience is saying? I think always on, is a big benefit, on our platform, just being able to jump into the conversation, to stay relevant with what's happening, or if there is a trend that happens, it may be different than your actual current set of objectives, but being open to try something or to just jump in is really important. And then I think there's an opportunity for mutual discovery between brands and users. There's a lot of things that you could learn that can inform and shift those objectives. So just staying really open, I think overall is kind of one of the big learning opportunities when focusing on objectives.
Yeah,
Melissa, how about you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Noah?
I was just going to.
That was Melissa. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to build on that a little bit, because we had talked about earlier about engagement, looking at comments, but like reading comments of your, usually sometimes you're far back into it and you're not in the day-to-day of like what's actually happening once that asset gets posted, et cetera. But if you look at what consumers are saying, both on your posts as well as competitors' posts, you can learn so much about what's resonating with them within that particular platform. So just calling that out as a great way just to get intel without big focus groups and everything else.
Yeah, how about you, Noah?
I think that when it comes to objectives, we really want to find, again, from a creative standpoint, what is the creative trend that we need to stick to, or creative trends that we need to stick to. So as far as I see it, is really to see what drives the most action, whatever action we want it to be. If it is a purchase, if it is downloading an app, or any kind of action, we want to see which of our creatives is driving our audience more to action, is moving them to doing what we want them to do. How do we tell the story and make an impact? And I think that's the biggest objective that could be whenever advertising on social platforms.
Courtney, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when we think about the right measures of success, we're really oriented on improving customer lifetime value. And really everything we do is designed to create more affection and loyalty with our customer base. And that's really how we assess the effectiveness of new advertising campaigns, new creative, new product features, even our customer service efforts. Everything is oriented on that long-term approach and creating customer affection.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, we have a few great questions from the audience that we're going to answer for you today. And I think we're going to transition into that now. As I said before, if you have a question for any of our speakers, get it in now. We still have plenty of time, but don't be shy. Get it in. Use the Ask a Question tab on your screen, and we'll answer your question if time allows. Why don't we go first to this question? This is a really interesting one. We were talking about brands and branding before, but this is a question about storytelling for brands. What do you think about storytelling for brands in the context of content quality versus content quality? Quantity versus quality, I should say. Is there a healthy balance or prioritization that ensures that your story arc is driven with intent, which ultimately allows for a real and authentic relationship with consumers? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was processing. I think storytelling is really important. I think a lot of what we see on our platform is the power of that content, not necessarily the refinement of how that story is produced. So if the story's like really good, really engaging, it's relevant, it can be elevated through measures of like high production, or it can be told in different ways with the help or the partnership of working with creators or influencers on the platform. But I do think the story's got to be the core element that you start with, because that's really where your intent lies.
I have to say I completely agree with Kenny. At the end of the day, you can tell a story through not just one ad, through several ads. And it's the way that you always have to stick to this same strategy, to the same story, and reinforce it over and over and over again. And that makes the audience relate to you. So no matter, we always say that when we do ads, we always like to have one main message. We don't want to, overboard it with a bunch of different messaging. We want to keep it short and simple so that no matter how long someone decides to watch it, it will be as clear as possible. But you can tell a story over a variety of different assets. And then once, seeing it all over the place, it all connects to the audience. And I think it's super important.
Did anyone else want to chime in on that?
The only thing I would add that we spend a lot of time talking about in the Wayfair marketing team is just how many messages we have in market at any given time. And this touches on what Noah was saying. There's platforms where you can have an overarching storyline and multiple messages under that umbrella. But then there are some platforms where you really need to be very, very focused on one message or maybe two messages, and not inundate customers with a lot of information. So we really think about that balance a lot when we're thinking about our content calendaring efforts.
Yeah. And at Burt's, we pretty much post daily in like Instagram, for example. And so we're continually telling stories, and we're trying to actually double down and tell even more stories but the things that we're trying to tell go beyond the product and go to like the brand, kind of tie back to those brand values. Like, how can we talk about our new truly glowing line and focus on an ingredient, and then basically tell them a story and more information about that ingredient versus just talking topically about, it does this for your skin or does that for your skin. So we're constantly trying to balance that. Sometimes those deep dive storytelling take longer and more effort than just simply, rattling off benefits, but we feel like they're important. And it's just a matter of like figuring out how often we do that in the context of like everything else we have to say. Because you're right, you can have too many messages out there, but we like to kind of give people a little bit of peek behind the curtain and see a little bit more so they can understand the product, understand the effort that we take into making the product just a little bit better.
Let's go next to this question. When you're testing a concept like quote, do assets containing talent work on X platform, unquote. At what point do you conclude that you've made the learnings, and how much room do you leave yourself for the assumption that you just haven't found the right talent for the creative?
Yeah, I can start with that one because I think that was based on one of my comments around testing. So we typically would test that for at least, 4 weeks in market, just to get a better idea on if that performs, and that is also with running paid. We have paid distribution behind that. It's not just putting that up organically on Pinterest. It's definitely through paid that we're trying to test that. But you're right. Sometimes it is the talent, and sometimes it's, you just have to continually test. And so what we might do is, with that particular example, we said, okay, for these products, let's just try to do more product-based, regimen-based pins, try those for a while. But then when we go to like a new product line or a new category, maybe we're talking about, instead of face care, we're talking about cosmetics. Cosmetics is a place where naturally you would want to see the product on your skin, whereas face care isn't that important. And so you have to kind of think about your product in particular and what would work best. So we know for cosmetics, it's like, well, let's try it again with cosmetics, a different talent, and see, just test again. So you're constantly kind of going down that line, making decisions, and then deciding what you want to keep testing and what you want to just say, okay, this is the truth, always the truth, and not going any further.
Earlier in the conversation, we were talking a little bit about subcultures and gave you a couple of examples of hashtag subcultures. But here's a question about whether you can elaborate a little bit more on what you actually mean by a subculture. Kenny, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a subculture is, it's akin to a community, but it's centered around passions and interests, and I think a lot of the times the subcultures blend into pop culture moments as well, so it could be inspired by something in the creative field of art or music, but also like technology. It's really where people are able to have a dialogue, an ongoing kind of dynamic dialogue around this topic, and they feel really connected and passionate about it.
Melissa or Courtney, did you want to chime in on that at all?
No, I think Kenny answered that quite well.
All right, well, let's move on then to our next question. And here it is. What would you consider testing execution style, for example, 3D versus photographic? And how do you separate the impact of the content of the creative, for example, beautiful people, from the execution style?
I would say that I would definitely test 3D versus photographic. It's like testing using assets versus using Shutterstock images, because at the end of the day, it's definitely two different styles of creatives, and I would want to know which one works best. The way to separate the different content, so this is something we actually do at Yellowhead using our technology, Allison, is we like to break down creatives into bits and pieces, really saying what images were used, what characters, was it male, was it female, was it real human, was it cartoon, and using the data that we have on each one of the creatives, try and analyze them to their fullest potential to really see if I used a real human in 30 creatives and those creatives performed well, then I can assume that that's something that's working for me. Of course, this is something that you can do manually as well by just looking at them. But at the end of the day, you really need to break down your creative, the content that's within them, to see exactly what you're creating. It's not necessarily having to take one creative and then creating 5 different versions of that. One time with cartoon, one time with real person, one time with a beautiful person, one time with, I don't know, other kind of persons. But the idea is to really break down and look overall all the creatives you created. Does this similar asset appears in all the ones that performed well? And then you can have this idea of what is working well within your ads and not just what ad worked well for you. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Noah, and keep those questions coming. Just a reminder, if your question is specific to one particular speaker, please be sure to indicate that. And Noah, in fact, here is a question that is specific to you. Do you have any tips for optimizing creatives for mobile gaming apps on different platforms?
Yeah. So mobile gaming apps, which is something we do a lot at Yellowhead. At the end of the day, I think that when it comes to gaming apps, there is definitely specific trends of what is happening right now within the different categories, and of course it ranges from category to category. But at the end of the day, I think that we're seeing a lot of mobile gaming brands trying a little bit of everything. And what I would do is, again, depending on budgets and how many creatives we want to create, then I would say let's test a little bit of everything. Let's try using real assets. Let's try using influencers. Let's try using hand-related gamified ads, and I can go on and on to the different styles of ads that we have within the mobile gaming industry, and really see what's working, and expand on that. You'll find that some ad says only live action videos work for me, and some ad says only influencer ad works for me. So this is really something that you have to test and not fear. Don't fear of testing. Try everything. Be bold. I think it's been said here before. I think that's the key takeaway when it comes to doing creative. Do creative. Try it out. Experiment. If anything goes wrong in a couple of days, it will be out of everybody's faces and nobody will remember. So just really try and experiment and explore your creative terrain, because the audience loves everything, and we just really need to find what works for your specific audience.
Here's a good general question that I'm going to throw out to all of you. Do you have any best-in-class advice on how to drive regimen beyond just showing collection type images? Anybody?
I wonder if so when I was mentioning regimen, I was actually referring to skincare regimens. So I don't know if that one was directed at me or not, but for us, it's about giving people a formula of do this, then this, then this. So for example, within skincare or any type of product line that is can be complex, with skincare, you have different skin conditions and you have different products. And it's like, which one goes first and how much do you use? Like the more you can educate within a regimen, I think is helpful. So that's one thing that we try to do. We try to lay it out very specifically, step by step, as well as trying to add a little color to each particular part of that regimen, just to help educate the audience a little bit more. So.
All right, maybe not such a general question, a little bit more specific than we thought. All right, let's go to this one next. For a brand or product, what is the key factor for better engagement? The platform where the product or brand appears, or the type of content that can be adapted to any digital platform? For example, a business software can be sold on TikTok, or is it simply not a good idea to sell that specific product on all digital platforms and only somewhere where there is a more specific audience? That's a great question.
Yeah, I think I can take this one. I think the most important factor is relevance. I don't think it's exactly like what you're selling, but like who and why you're speaking to them. Again, like just going back to the coming around or the advice around intent. I think if you're connecting your product, solution, or service to something that's valuable and you're additive to where this party will be engaged, it will be relevant, to them. I just think you shouldn't say like, oh, software, you can't do that on TikTok. I think we've seen a ton of success with that, but it's because of the relevance is what's driving the engagement.
I think we'll also be surprised at how many people are mistaken about the kind of audience that appears on different platforms. How, for example, people would say TikTok is for a younger audience, but that is so false. Like everybody's on TikTok, or it's just a general misunderstanding of who is the actual users of the platforms. And I would recommend to anyone to just learn the different audiences, who's actually there and how they consume the different media, because everybody is pretty much everywhere.
Along those lines, I would say for us, we find that broad-based targeting always works better than really nitty-gritty targeting. Aside from personalization is a whole other thing. But when you're trying to get a mass message or creative out there, broad-based targeting always works for us.
And I'd say, leaning into what Noah said about, it's not just young people are on TikTok. It's not just people dancing on TikTok. We recently did a hashtag challenge right before Valentine's Day, and it was more about a love letter to yourself. And it was based on self-love and sharing the things you love about yourself. And that actually resonated really well within TikTok. And again, it's not the first thing you would think about when you think about TikTok, but we have like 8 billion views and counting. It was definitely a success, and it was great to see people tell their stories about self-love and just writing this love letter to themselves. So I think you'll be surprised at what you can find within each platform.
Let's do one more audience question, and then we're going to wrap things up with some final closing remarks from each of you. This question I'm going to give you in abridged format in the interest of time. Here it is. How do you evaluate a platform in its ability to effectively deliver your brand's message?
This is such a complex question for 4 minutes left. But I think at this point, this is something that really depends on view time. If you're telling a specific message using a specific asset, I would want to know how long is my audience watching the video I created. Did they get the full message? Was that, you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, I can make 5-second videos because if that's the attention span, but how much will I actually be able to get across? So what I would want to test is, I would want to create a video, tell my message, and then see, how much time did my user actually spend? And of course, it also has a lot to do with the creative itself, but it also depends on the specific platform and how someone consumed their media there. Because we know nowadays that people can even watch 30-minute long videos on Facebook, right? So it's not always a matter of time, but more of a combination of my asset with the specific platform. So that's why we need to make them fit together.
All right. Well, you know what? I want to end this webinar with one recommendation from each of you on what you would like the audience to know. What takeaways do you have in the form of one recommendation? And we'll go around the table here, starting with Melissa.
Yeah, so I think my best piece of advice is not just to rely on the platform's best practices to guide you. Like, use that as a starting point, but then test different creatives, see what works and what doesn't. Again, it's very individualized to your brand, your company, et cetera. And then based on that data, you can iterate and build, better creative as you go along.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Kinney?
I would say don't try to be perfect and overthink it. I think action, drives action. So, trends, culture, they happen so quickly. You don't want to get caught up in doing it perfectly. You want to be part of what's happening. So again, don't overthink it. Just dive in.
Noah?
I think that even though we're talking here about creating different creatives for each platform, and sometimes budgets might be an issue and you're thinking of production, my tip is, it doesn't always have to be, big productions. Things can be done easily, like I showed with the TikTok examples, and Kini has said it before. Today, everybody is content creator. You can create content with no big productions. So really just try to make it as fit to the platform with no additional big productions needed.
And finally, Courtney, real quick, 30 seconds.
For the performance-oriented marketers out there and brands, I would say don't get too bogged down by the short-term metrics. Make sure you're also looking at your creative over a long time horizon, and make sure that those short-term metrics are a proxy for long-term outcomes.
Okay, well, a big thanks to all of our speakers today for all of their insights into today's topic. Melissa Culbertson, Courtney Laurie, Noah Miller, and Kinney Edwards. And of course, thanks also to Yellowhead for making today's event possible. Before we wrap things up, just a few quick notes. We did record today's webinar, so if you missed anything or if you'd like to view it again, you'll be able to do that right here on this page in about 30 minutes. Also, a reminder, before you leave us today, don't forget about the rating system on your screen. If you could let us know what you thought about today's webinar, we would love to see all of those comments. We would love to see that feedback. So please take a couple of moments. You can rate this webinar on a 5-star scale. Even better, you can provide us with written feedback. And finally, a reminder that today's webinar is copyright 2021 by VentureBeat. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by VentureBeat, which is responsible for their content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. Thanks so much for being with us today. That does conclude today's VB Live event. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. Have a great day, everybody.